All right. Well, we this edition of Convergence session, I think we've been seeking I think more specific action items to start to execute some design ideas around. And I was talking with Kristen yesterday, and I kind of 5 whys a bit with her, and that's what I put at the top of the agenda. And then Gabe actually iterated on that further. And I was wondering, Gabe, if you could walk us through what you came up with.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I sort of laid out a possible iterative approach, our values and all. For thinking about breaking this into different smaller problems to solve, so it's easier to grok and solution on. And Holly asked me the question last night, what's the single most important outcome we want to have from this? And it's hard for me to put that into one sentence, but what I can do is say, if we take this approach, each 2-week iteration, I think we as a team can clearly define what success looks like, and that's finding a solution that works for the particular problems we are working on that iteration, where the solution is valuable to customers and users. That's both UX and product determining that. It's usable. That's all in UX to determine that. It's technically feasible, which is something that engineering is responsible for. And then business viable, like, does it work for our business? And that's what product does. And I think if we look at just a couple problems each week, limited to a very defined scope, that it will be easier to basically achieve all of the opportunities that are listed up top in a more like sane way. And so what I sort of did is looking, if we're going to have, we break this into 4 iterations, what's like sort of the order to do it, but also the context for each. And so I put together a suggestion for the first iteration, which is exploring the foundational Collabject structure, and some basic data that we can look at in terms of what people are doing on issues now and what's used the most or interacted with most frequently across the most amount of users, which is, if you think about this as like impact, it's creating an issue, commenting on an issue, updating the description, updating an issue title, and editing a comment. Those are the most popular things from a unique user standpoint. And you can imagine, it's not the total count, but how many comments do you leave on an issue a day? You can probably extrapolate that out. It's very, very high. And so I was thinking, if we scope the first kind of iteration to look, assuming like we're starting with a blank canvas, and we look at just a title, a description, and discussions, how can we improve some of the usability problems that we have there? And so I kind of took a stab at defining what each of those things were and adding some definitions to it, which we can kind of talk through and iterate on as we see fit. But then basically picking three usability problems to solve based on the UX research that we have to date. And then looking at those within the context of different critical paths that our users take, and spending 2 weeks just solving these. Like, when I mean like a blank slate, assume there's nothing in the view except for a title, a description, and discussions, because I think that's going to form the basis of like what I believe is the most important aspect of a collab object, because the purpose is to facilitate collaboration as efficiently as possible. There's not many competitors that do it well. They sort of treat it like an afterthought, and I think that we have an opportunity to differentiate ourselves and stand out if we sort of like make that the heart of the collab object experience. So that would be like the first iteration, and then you can kind of see the next few iterations explore things like surfacing additional context within collab objects, relating collab objects to each other and other GitLab objects. Then, like, if we can get to it, customizing the collab objects to better reflect our customers' business domains. But really, if we get these first 3 like buckets of problem solved within each of these iterations, it will help us take what we currently have and achieve our product goals of like basically migrating epics to types of issues and all that other stuff, while also improving usability. So that's sort of how I looked at it. And I'm curious to get feedback if this is an acceptable path. If there's anything that we want to change, we can talk through definitions, we can talk through focus, problems to solve, critical paths, but that's sort of like how I thought about making this a little bit more actionable for us.
This is kind of what I thought we were doing, so I'm on board.
Cool.
The only
Chloe,
thing
what do you-
that, sorry, I had started
No,
to
I
talk
was
and then I
asking your
realized I was
opinion.
muted. The only thing that I would want to add in, because this looks good to me as well, is just more of a refined kind of problem statement as to what exactly we want to address when it comes to the foundational Collabject structure.
Yeah, I'll jump in for a sec. I might push back on problem statement approach for now, because we have a solution that people are using. We know that there's usability problems, and to chip away at those problems bit by bit, we may not be able to, I hate this phrase, think outside the box, as it were, think outside the issue. So if I might direct your attention to the opportunity statement instead. Does that help to stand out amongst our competitors? Collaboration across the team is not treated as a critical component in software lifecycle tools. So the objective or the opportunity is to make Collabjects like issues and epics more conducive to collaboration. So that's
But then I have
big how
that.
might. Yeah.
That is very helpful. Thank you. And I'm so sorry I was talking over you. I'm so bad about
No,
that.
no. Don't ever apologize.
About gauging like when it's appropriate to jump in.
Zoom
This
problem.
is this is helpful because it does help to create a bit of a constraint, which is kind of what I was looking for in having that problem statement. But I was thinking that we had talked about not focusing on discussions as part of MVPs. So does that mean that we can incorporate discussions as part of this exploratory work?
I think as I was thinking about it, if out of all of our work, this is the most frequent action by our users is collaborating, it's the right place to start, because everything else that we want to iterate and improve on from usability and product capability standpoint should be designed around this experience, the experience of collaborating, right? And so that's where like we have to refactor it from a code level standpoint already. So that's going to happen. And we might not even have to make huge changes to like what a thread looks like, right? We can, but it's more like how can we, in getting into specific problem statements, if we're starting with the collaboration experience as a core pillar of what a Collabject is, how can we make it more efficient to understand what's changed and what's new since the last time I interacted with a Collabject? Like that was the common usability problem that came out of a lot of research. Another one was like, how can we take the outcomes of the threaded discussions and efficiently capture them in the description, right? With any usable way without having to scroll back and forth, open multiple tabs or windows to like look at my discussion and then look at my description and edit at the same time, so I can like have both those contexts to do that. Like, how can we reduce the amount of context switching between discussions, descriptions, Collabject to Collabject, for example? Like, I don't know how many tabs I ended up with open because I like right-clicked open a comment to go look at that comment that was referenced in one comment that's in another issue. Like, this is the core of the usability problem from a collaboration efficiency standpoint for the individual users, like from the way I see it. And so I think like if we start with solving this problem, then it makes layering on things like, how do we associate metadata? How do we like relate Collabjects to one another? Like if it all flows from the ability and the pillar of improving collaboration and making that experience lovable. Does that make sense? That's my hypothesis. I could be wrong, but I think it's backed up by a lot of good research that y'all have done. So
I agree. A lot of the feedback that I got from the jobs to be done research was, I'm sorry, not the jobs to be done, but the how can we improve the issue experience? A lot of the comments in there were centered around ways to improve commenting and facilitating that discussion. And personally, I think this is something that not all of our competitors are handling well either. So I think there's definitely opportunity in that regard as well.
I also want to acknowledge Alexis, you put a lot of thought into how to break this down as well, and that's really valuable. I think to start, we have to think outside of epics and issues and think about what I've coined the foundational Collabject structure. So thinking more about that, the collaboration around this this type of primitive, rather than narratives for Parker, right? Or narratives for Parker as a manager of projects, of many projects. Is that cool, or how do you feel about that?
That's kind of how I was thinking about it. So I'm kind of like, I'm gonna think about why it was so confusing, or like how we are also confused, I guess. I'll think about like how I can communicate better.
Same page and all that fun stuff. I think too, like keeping this sort of context for the first iteration, where we're kind of limiting it to like 3 things, right? And it's these 3 things, and then the deliverables are basically prototypes and mockups, you know, and so just trying to keep it as simple as possible. And if there's prior art, or there's not art, but if there's prior mockups or there's prior research, that would just kind of inform some of the choices in the prototypes, things like that. And just keep the level of documentation in the first iteration minimal, so that we can explore around this blank slate context in these 3 how might we's.
I do think there's viable, some of the questions you asked, Alexis, are also like really relevant in the agenda. And I think point 3, Holly, if you want to vocalize that question too, I think it ties into personas, and why stepping outside of Parker is sort of important right now too.
Did you want one of us to go first?
Yeah, I mean, you wrote number 3, so I feel like that's where we're at.
So for number 3, who specifically are we targeting? So this was, and Alexis probably got some of this in her research as well. We were targeting Parker for our jobs research. However, obviously Parker is not the only persona that uses issues regularly. And we could say all the personas, but I think it's best for us to narrow it down to sort of the ones that are most involved with the collaboration aspect. My thought on that would be that it would be Parker and maybe Delaney, I think, and maybe Sasha. I believe that's the dev lead and the engineer as the starting point, or maybe even just the PM and the engineer. And I kind of bundle the engineer and designers into the same bucket when I think about how they collaborate within our product, which may or may not be good, but I know we have a designer persona now too. So that would make sense as far as I'm concerned. Alexis, do you want to maybe verbalize yours? I see you didn't really target Parker, which that also makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of different too, because I had also quality management. So, but like thinking at a higher level, I was just kind of asking questions more around like, what are you trying to do? How are you collaborating with a team and all? So maybe I could surface some of that research more, but it was really everyone, right, who works on a project. And then it's like, are you working on a project that's, you know, a large project, a program? Are you working on one task? Are you working on multiple tasks? Is what kind of task, you know, is it like a test case? Like, so different granularity, I think, but not really tied to one person, I would say, especially like as we define the personas. I don't think it would fit into 1 or 2 of those people, but we could think of like maybe how to like prioritize them. I don't know if that would make sense. What do y'all think?
I linked to in my comment under point 3, basically this gets into the next iteration, but talking about how the different personas like intersect on a collab object. But basically, like, Presley wants to get feedback on designs, right, between product and engineering. Sasha, Devin, and Delaney for relating MRs commits to an issue playing work, Sydney and Alex for relating incidents and alerts to issues and the MRs that resolve them, Sam for relating security vulnerabilities to the issue that resolved them. Like this like collab object is like the intersection of all of the roles. I think there are specific tasks that they will take within it, but at the end of the day, almost all of them will do in this first like thing that we're talking about, the foundation object. All of them will leave comments. All of them will want to understand the description and the information's there and how that like basically guides actions. And then the title gives them context. So that's where like there are specific jobs we've done that each of these have, and we can explore them more like in future iterations. But for this first iteration, it literally is any knowledge worker who's collaborating with other knowledge workers to get a job done, basically.
Yeah, what I really appreciate about this, the iteration steps is a lot of the upcoming questions, like what about hierarchy? What about watch versus notifications? We're going to defer those to future iterations. The first iteration is only about these critical paths for collaboration on a Collabject. So that way, when we come together and we talk about ideas, we're not talking about everything. We're only talking about the things that are the focus right now. So, and it's not that those things are important, they're just not important right now. You know, we need an incremental approach to be able to iterate on ideas efficiently. Gabe, you, in our monthly one-on-one earlier today, you walked me through some of the business opportunity and market size kind of stuff. Are you ready to share that issue with other folks?
I mean, that
really helped me put things into context.
Yeah, I can walk through it. It's a work in progress, but this audience, it's fine to join in the work in progress. And I'm happy to drop this into the agenda right quick so that it's there for everyone to see. Put it under 5. So one of the things that we were asked to do by the board is figure out if we were given more investment, how would we invest that money to reach $1 billion in ARR by 2025, right? So right now the product leadership is working across all the product teams to identify like different opportunities. And so what I'm doing to contribute to that within Plan, and I'm working with Kristen and Mark, is looking at the general markets. So tying back like our original BHAG as a company, which is usually a 30-year time horizon, it is to become the most popular collaboration tool for knowledge workers in any industry. So this is super vague and generic, but like that's the BHAG, and I get it. I get why it is. And we just happen to be starting with DevOps lifecycle first because that's where the biggest market opportunity was. But it's really to become a collaboration tool for knowledge workers. And I think we're doing a great job of making DevOps lifecycle more user-friendly, but we're not doing a good job of making GitLab user-friendly or even useful for non-developers or domain experts that aren't engineers. That's the way that Mike framed it earlier. So like looking at the opportunity, there's basically by 2023, there's going to be 27 million developers. At the same time, there's going to be 1.14 billion knowledge workers. So for every one software developer, there's going to be 41 knowledge workers who are domain experts in whatever their knowledge work is, right? Whether that's marketing, whether that's sales, whether that's being a technical account manager, like those are all considered knowledge workers. And we look sort of like at adjacent markets to where we're at right now, which we're just focusing on this, like ITSM, which is like ticketing, customer support, is a $12.1 billion market. The broader PPM market, which is when you get into like funding, resource allocations, true portfolio management, like there's an additional over $4 billion in market opportunity there. But collaboration software, I'm going to reorder these. It's $31.5 billion. Like that's how big the market is. It's huge. So as a product manager, think about how can we set ourselves up to be successfully like reach into these adjacent markets to start capturing some of that market share. Across all of these things, there pretty much is like one constant, and that's collaboration, right? Like this is listed as a market, but you collaborate in DevOps planning, you collaborate in ITSM, You like use business process automation to make collaboration more efficient. And so kind of where you can look at this issue, I'm not going to go through all these, but there's all these opportunities in these adjacent markets that kind of tie on to what we've already been working on, but make it better. And it's almost like if we can figure out how to take what is our sort of this object of a core collaboration object, and then we kind of build it up with different layers of having relationships and like being able to have workflows and other things like that. You more or less can take this one solution with these sort of generic views, like a list, a board, a grid, and you can apply the same underlying technology. I mean, you could even change the UI, but basically the same underlying technology to all these different markets with all these opportunities without having like to rebuild anything like substantial. And so as a program manager, I'm thinking about how can we leverage the smallest technical footprint possible, which means we don't have to build as much, because basically every line of code costs a lot of money over its lifetime to maintain, not just to create, but how can we leverage everything that we're building to allow it to power solutions across all of these different like market segments and real like opportunities. And so that's kind of going back to why I also want to start with like the basis of collaboration, because it's the universal. Like there will be other things we build maybe specific to these different solutions, but the collaboration is a universal thing because people collaborate, right? And I think that's why it's like getting this right is not only a differentiator, but sets us up to be successful as we start looking into these other different markets and opportunities in the future. So is that what you're looking for, Mike?
Yeah, that thanks for walking through that again. That was helpful to see. Yeah, Alexis, I was wondering, I know that you made a plan, you made a proposal for a plan with Kristen. And I was wondering if there's anything that we're missing out on with this first iteration that you've caught and captured in your initial plan that you're concerned we might overlook.
It looks like we're starting smaller, I suppose. And if we're basing it on usability issues that are already documented, things like that, starting really small there. I think it, is just a smaller version. Validating some of it, I think that's already scoped out, correct? Or are we including that?
I mean, if an iteration is 2 weeks, that might be, where did Gabe go?
Dropped.
We're facing meeting. Oh, okay. All right, so.
No PMs.
Yeah, I was like, did I offend somebody? Funny.
Now we can just make all the decisions.
Yeah. Okay, now what we're really gonna do is throw it all out. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I think, if an iteration at GitLab is currently 2 weeks, this is a lot. It's a lot of so the critical pass at the bottom. I mean, yeah, like, it'd be feasible to make prototypes for these things within 2 weeks. They'd be really quick and dirty. And I don't know if they would be at the fidelity where we could get really good feedback from end users. But I'm of the mind, like, let's just see how far we can get. And if we find that we're making some really big assumptions, then we'll change the plan. And iteration 2 would be, okay, validate these things.
So is the goal initially for the prototypes just to learn and discover?
Yeah, to explore.
Are we still wanting to deliver something for implementation and road mapping in a couple of weeks, or like a milestone and a half?
I don't know. That's up to Kristen. I'm hoping that from these bi-weekly or twice a week meetings, that if something germane to a goal outside of this issue refactor initiative, if something drops out of it that's interesting, then yeah, we'll run after it. But this is the main focus.
So I feel like we would need to get on the same page there, because all I've been hearing is that in a milestone and a half now, we're going to start refactoring, and the engineering or development team needs a plan. We need to roadmap out how to, how they're going to work on this refactoring and like what they're going to be refactoring stuff.
Oh, I thought you meant, sorry, I thought you meant like actually refactoring roadmaps, the feature.
Heck no, that's another can
like,
of worms.
Sure, if you want to.
Kristen would love that, but no.
Yeah, okay, that's a really good question. So how does this activity impact the wider team, the people outside of this meeting? I think we're gonna riff on some really bad ideas together, and then the good ideas become a plan. But I think it would be it'd be kind of odd to take our first ideas and start to make a plan from them. It's pretty unlikely that those first ideas are going to be the best ideas. And
does first ideas mean whatever we have at the end of the 1.5 milestone?
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't. So an iteration is 2 weeks. If we are exploring solution ideas for 2 weeks, it's pretty unlikely that's going to culminate in what it might culminate in is, hey, here's like the high level vision of what we're thinking for discussions. This is totally hypothetical. And then engineering can say, oh, we have some ideas about some work that we can do that would support that in terms of refactoring the code or whatever, what have you, right? But yeah, so it sounds like, Alexis, you want us to have something to build within a milestone and a half?
It's not me. That was, I thought, the constraint that we, like a week ago or whenever we first started talking about it, it was, okay, in 2 milestones, we're going to start building or like refactoring issues and epics and, everything else. We need to know, what does this thing look like? How do we like simplify, one code base, like things like that. So that's why I had this kind of structured plan. And I was like, okay, how do we like have a thing to show like,
here's think about it as a garden. We can expect we'll have tomatoes by July, but we don't know what day in July, right? All we know is that we're nurturing those little tomato seeds. And right now, like we have little tomato seeds. What day in July they become pickable tomatoes is up to the weather, basically. So, and the soil. So what I'm hoping is that with these twice a week convergence conversations, we come together with prototypes, and every iteration of those prototypes, we get closer to something that, reflects the outcome that we want, that we have a basic structure for a collaboration object. And if we're open and transparent about that work and the engineers are aware of it and involved in some way, then there'll be an understanding of like work that we need to do in the software that would support these ideas.
So would this be the priority for like the foreseeable future, or like, because I thought this was kind of
this is not not a project. I think what we've done in the past is we treated pretty significant things as projects with like short timelines, and we don't get the outcomes that we want. We did that with simplifying groups and projects. The simplifying groups and project initiative was sort of treated like a project, and it was it was kind of treated like a side project, and then because it sort of had a deadline, when the deadline passed, people were like, well, now this side project is definitely not on the radar because the deadline is over and I've got these other things to do. This is going to be an ongoing thing where we have a discovery and vision track, and we have a delivery track. And there's going to be things in the delivery track, which is writing code and pushing it out to production, that'll support the foundation for where we're going with this. So I think we could think of us as working 2 weeks ahead of engineering, but that doesn't mean that at the end of the 2 weeks that engineering is implementing a full end-to-end solution for how issues are going to work from now on. Like, that's just totally unrealistic, right?
I thought that was weird too. I mean, and like, why would that trigger?
People hope that something like this takes 8 weeks. This is continuous, and we've already been doing it continuously, but without these sort of constraints and sort of a more deeply thought through kind of vision of where it goes. It's been a lot of incremental tweaks, like make the labels, you can remove a label by clicking an X, right? That's a tiny incremental tweak. And this is a bigger, longer term kind of thing. But the most important thing is that twice a week we come together, we share the direction that we're going, those ideas pollinate, and it evolves the next time we come together. And that it's constrained to these critical paths, so to speak, that we've decided on iteration to iteration.
So my ask then, and I'll work on it with Kristen, is just, can we just make that clear, like what the goal or like the scope of this is? Because what I keep hearing over and over again, and I think the Jonalds think this is the case, is 2 milestones,
Yeah, I'm not sure why people do that, other than, I don't know, it's not healthy. We do have deadlines, and those deadlines are twice a week, right? It's come together and share what we've done the past couple of days.
And is this no longer going to be this meeting? Initially, we're going to do this for like 2 or 3 weeks. Is this like the new thing for plan, basically, or how are we thinking about this? If
it works, it might be a new thing for plan. I don't know yet. The things that you're talking about with Kristen, those are understood to be important. Those aren't until iteration 3. Relating collabjects to each other. That's where you get into scenarios with epics and roadmaps, right?
Oh yeah, no. So the plan I set up before was based on everyone telling me that this was like a 2-month project, Mike. So this is like the first time I'm hearing this.
Why do people say that though? Like,
everyone kind of agreed upon it, and I was like, cool. Yeah. Like, then we really need to like be clear about what we're doing and scope it down.
I would rather, so instead of saying this is what's that law? A project will take as long as the time that it's given. Like, it's actually better to break it down into smaller pieces and say, this is going to take a week. This is going to take 2 days. And we'll make more progress in 2 milestones than we would if we said this is going to take 2 milestones. I forgot what that law is called, but you can look it up. A project will take as long as the time that it's given to whatever the deadline. So
yeah, and I'm not pushing back on that, or you. I'm just kind of like, all right, let's like what are we all thinking?
I'm like even more radical, like 2 milestones. How about we do something every 2 days that allows us to have a conversation about the direction that we're going in,
And then like, what is how do we prioritize things that we kind of want to swarm on too, right? Might be an interesting thing to think about, because if we want to swarm on everything, then we're probably not going to, I don't know. I mean, that's a different way of working, I guess. That's not really.
I would argue even the scope for this first iteration is pretty big for 2 weeks. If this has critical paths, but I would say critical user journeys, right? This is 4 user journeys. That's a lot of thought, a lot of prototyping, a lot of mocking screens up.
Can I get picky? Can we not call that issue then? Yay.
Yeah, because I think maybe
trademark it.
To diverge, for Holly, it might be an issue. For you, it'd be Alexis, it would be an epic, right?
Or test case or requirement, or maybe like a subtask for Holly, right?
Yeah. So, and Holly identified that the start of this is going to be a little messy. It's not going to be like a straight line, but I think as long as we're reconnecting at a high frequency, we'll see a lot of really interesting ideas merge together. And then the more of those ideas merge together and the better we feel about them, the more we're willing to commit to, okay, we need to make this back end change. And maybe like there's going to be a milestone where it's just back end changes. It's not going to go in the release post. That's okay. Like only valuable things should go in the release post. And this is the part where Gabe's going to watch and go, no, no, no. But well, that's his fault for dropping out early. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I do think, there's going to be things that we find that we could put in the product release milestone to milestone as an improvement, but it's not going to be, probably won't be big impact. It's going to be incremental. And if it's incremental, it's going to take longer than 2 milestones, right?
So I know we're a little bit over, which is fine.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else that I need to do in terms of meetings right now, but as far as next steps, it sounds to me like what would be beneficial is to go ahead and start working on some ideas visually, some prototypes, some sketches and rough ideas to support those 4 points. Is that accurate? Is that kind of your expectation as well, Mike?
Yeah, I think this would be, each of these could be a prototype informed by the how might we's, anchored by the definitions with the bigger opportunity in mind. So I think what's going to change iteration to iteration will probably be what the deliverable is for these. Like I think initially it would be prototypes, and then after that it'll be like solution validation. We did some user testing experiments. This is what we learned, that kind of stuff. So I think what's in this first iteration is probably going to inform the future iterations quite a bit. It's just we'll get more into the details about the workflows, yeah, managing and surfacing additional context, how they relate. But this is the plan, and the plan can change, right? But
sounds good.
We can shoot for this. This is 8 weeks, if my math is right. But let's first, just try to get some concepts around these, critical user journeys.
I'm excited.
Cool. Does this help? Because I personally didn't know how to wrap my arms around this until about an hour ago when Gabe and I met up about it. Does it help you?
I was less confused, but I was definitely not on the same page with the time frame because, yeah, like I said before, so that's good.
So, I don't think in 8 weeks we're going to pull the plug on this initiative. The use cases and the objects that we're talking about, that's already our daily reality anyway. Like why would this stop at 8 weeks? And if we're really transparent about what we're doing, the ideas that from engineering will come to them if they're aware of what we're up to. I think if they're not aware of what they're up to, then it will be this kind of, hey, we were in a cave for 8 weeks and now here it is. Like, we don't want it to play out that way.
I hope that wasn't the intention. But yeah, I think like what I thought it was more just like swarm on the thing, like have the general structure and stuff. So yeah, same but different.
Yeah, our deadlines are better than 8 weeks. Our deadlines are every couple days. Every couple times a week, we're going to come together and show some really, sketchy wireframes or whatever works.
When you say they're sketchy, you probably mean literally sketches, but now it kind of sounds like they're going to be shady in some way.
Yeah, they're sketchy, like, neighborhood watch level kind of sketchy.
So would it open a can of worms in the spirit of transparency for us to start tagging folks like Pedro, who's going to be obviously focused on a potential Collabject of merge requests eventually, and Amelia, who's working on incidents? Or should we focus on just this core idea initially, and then once we've got a little bit more definition surrounding it, pull other folks in. What I'm trying to avoid, obviously, is the analysis paralysis and kind of stalling out because of the collaboration, but I also don't want to leave folks out that I know will have valuable opinions to add.
Yeah, I think it's important to have our own opinions first. And that way, when people do give feedback, it's not like this, oh, so-and-so said it should be this way. And then that becomes the opinion. I think as a team that's focused on, cross-functional collaboration around planning and the progress of work, we have to have our own opinions about how that's embodied in a solution. And then I think with other teams, across other stages, it's just about awareness and maybe more of the perspective of like, they might be inspired by what we're doing rather than having to approve what we're doing. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Cool. All righty. I'm going to upload this and summarize it now that we have a concrete plan. So the Johnalds, if you're listening, now you know what we're up to.
The Johnalds.
Yeah, it's an inside joke between Alexis and me.
I've heard of the open joke.
What's that?
I assume that that's Jake and Donald, right?
John and Donald.
Jay
And
Donald.
And Jake.
Donald J. Donald. I don't know. Whatever.
Whenever I say Donald or John in one-on-one with Alexis, I accidentally say Johnald. So it's stuck. All right.
Works for either team, but yeah.
What's that?
Works for either team. It's either John. Well, no, it doesn't work for either team. Don't listen to me. Never mind.
It just works.
Let's just run away now.
All right. Thank you all. Yeah, if you have any, do you think we need a separate Slack channel for this, or do you think the plan channel is good?
Plan is fine, I think, because we don't want to like silo off, right?
Totally.
Agree.
All right. Yeah, if you feel stumped, just put it in the plan channel.
All right.
Or inspired, whatever. If you want to communicate around it, we'll do it there. Okie dokie.
Parkinson's law, by the way.
What's that?
Parkinson's law is the law that you were.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that was bothering me so much. I was like, I know what that's called. So Parkinson's law, can you say it, the summary one more time?
I put the link in the Zoom chat, but it is the adage that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And he didn't mean to hang everybody up with a last minute comment. I was just throwing that out there so we can wrap up still.
Sometimes applied to the growth of bureaucracy in an organization. That's funny. All right. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.